We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement. Joining us, as always, to talk through some wide receiver sleepers. He's the reception perception creator. Of course, you know him from Yahoo Sports. Matt Harmon, how was your week 8, brother? This is a crazy, I guess, discussion in general because we're almost to double digits already. So how was last week for you, brother?
Yeah, it's crazy. The split point, the halfway mark of the season always feels like, oh my God, I can't believe we got here. I can't believe it went this fast in some ways. Like this is where I feel like once we get close to Thanksgiving, feels like we hit that downward slope and then it all just fades away so fast. But I think especially in 2020, man, it's like, yeah, I can't believe we got here. I feel great that we've got this many games in so far. And it's been like such a crazy year with all the injuries and everything. I'm at that point where I'm like very reflective about the season, but it's been awesome, man. I'm still loving every minute of it.
Yeah, man, there's been some good games, some games to look forward to this week as well. But I won't waste any more time. Let's jump right into it. I think that it's another week. Last week we talked about it. There was a ton of options on the cheaper side of things on DraftKings at the wide receiver position. Feels like another week like that again this week. So the first guy on your list, Sterling Shepard. And I know you have some long-rooted ties to Sterling Shepard because of how many times you've charted him for reception perception. He's 4,800. He's the guy that followed up his 658 and 1 line in week 7 with an 874 line on 10 targets in week 8. So he's had at least 6 catches in each of his 3 full games this season. So that sets up pretty well for DraftKings scoring, obviously a full PPR. I don't know if he has the full kind of ceiling that you'd like on FanDuel, but I do think that in this spot, specifically this week against Washington, that's just going to pressure Danny Dimes all day. Kind of the guys that are in that shorter depth area of the field. Definitely interesting. So tell me about Shepard.
Right, exactly. That's why I like Shepard. I think I just like him better as a player than a guy like Darius Slayton, who's in this range too. In our sub 5K range, which, like you said, there's a lot of guys to consider. Deontay Johnson's down here too. Like it just like as soon as I started looking at the 5K guys, I'm like, man, it's a nice week to try to find some value at receiver. But Shepard stands out because as soon as he's got back into the lineup, he's immediately gotten volume. He trails Evan Ingram by only 1 for the team lead in targets over the last 2 weeks, 18 for Shepard, 14 catches. Like he's going to be a guy that piles up those receptions in the short to intermediate areas because as you mentioned it, like Danny Dimes, an already erratic guy. When he gets pressure, he's looking for that outlet receiver. Shepard has clearly been that guy more than Golden Tate, who's down there just 5 targets over the last 2 weeks. Obviously, Tate has that awesome touchdown the other night against the Buccaneers. And like it's just the perfect like Danny Dimes spectrum with like there's this awesome perfectly placed touchdown to Golden Tate and then screws up the 2-point conversion, which is always going to make you nervous about rostering these Giants receivers. But Shepard at this price, at this value in that matchup, I think is pretty exciting. And Washington's offense too, like they're competitive, I think, with Kyle Allen. Like it's pretty much just 3 guys that we care about in that offense: Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, and Antonio Gibson. And those guys have all looked pretty decent from a fantasy perspective in the 2 weeks that Kyle Allen has started and finished games. So I think that's going to be incentive enough that the Giants offense has to kind of push it through the air a little bit like we saw against the Bucs on Monday night. And that's good for all of these skill position players here.
Yeah, one thing I've been trying to do a little bit better about is just trying to do like little mini correlations, right? So we obviously like Terry McLaurin in this spot also. He's more expensive, all that. But in this matchup, I don't know if there's anyone on the Giants that can keep up with him. He has been very good this year. Obviously, a very condensed offense, like you said, so much value in that. But having another guy on the other side, just these mini stacks that you don't necessarily have to roll out the quarterback, I like that quite a bit. And I think that's a mistake I've made in the past is like not really looking at the offensive line stuff enough, especially when I'm trying to target guys that are going deeper down the field at wide receiver. So a guy like Slayton, maybe he doesn't even have a chance to get all the way down the field before obviously the pressure comes to Dime. So I'm with you on Shepard. The next one, I don't even know why I didn't leave with this guy. This is like this is your guy before anyone. John Brown, 4,600 for Buffalo, just 2 targets last week. But I think the positive thing is that he played 47 and 58 snaps. So we think he's healthy, right?
Right, exactly. I think that was a good sign, right? That he had the playing time. Obviously, the production wasn't there. The production really hasn't been there for anybody in this Bills offense besides Stephon Diggs. But I think at some point this offense is going to find itself again. And why not a matchup against the Seattle Seahawks, who not only are they bad on defense, they're also banged up on defense. We'll see as we go through the week if some of these guys are going to get back out there. But I love John Brown. He was on a hot streak to start this season with the rest of the offense. I actually think him being away from the team or not 100% has been a factor in why the offense has sort of taken a few steps back from what we saw in September. But this, again, is just a perfect spot against a Seattle team that's 30th in passing defense DVOA, is bottom 5 in sack rate. I love John Brown in this matchup to be a potential blow-up play, especially like Stephon Diggs will be an obvious guy. I wouldn't even mind doing like a super aggressive if you're in tournaments like triple stack with Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and John Brown. Because you know that if Josh Allen hits in this matchup, most likely it's going to go to Stephon Diggs or John Brown. This team, and Josh Allen specifically, targets wide receivers at a higher rate, over 70% of his passes, more than any other quarterback that started a significant amount this year. So if someone's going to hit in this offense, you know it's going to be one of those two guys.
I love it, man. I was a little bit concerned. Obviously, we haven't seen John Brown even top 42 yards since week 2, but I probably just need to get that completely out of my head because you said it, like the matchup against Seattle. If there's a get right spot out there, this is it. Easy stack, obviously, with Diggs if you did add to it. But I can't get away from this game before I ask you, which week is it? Is it Lockett week or is it Metcalf week? It feels like Evans versus Godwin now. It's just like roulette. Which guy is it going to be? Any thoughts?
I think this could be a week, sort of like the Dallas Cowboys game, or even week 1, when Lockett went over 90 yards and obviously Metcalf had a big game too, where it's both of these guys this week. Like I wouldn't worry about, and this is why this team is so dangerous right now in offense, right? Because you mentioned it, you try to stop one, the other is going to completely rip you apart. Like if you focus on DK, and teams should focus on DK because he's an unbelievable stud at this point. But like then if you do that, Lockett's going to drop 3 touchdowns on you. So I think this is a week, though. I think this game could be high scoring because I think the Bills offense will respond to Seattle in this one. And I wouldn't worry about trying to pick between the two because frankly, like this Bills defense is probably one of the most unproductive units or the most disappointing units in the entire NFL. I know that they've done pretty well these last 2 weeks, but there are 2 AFC teams, New York Jets, obviously Cam Newton not playing up to his full potential with a broken skill position group. So I'm not willing to say that the Bills defense has taken that step forward. And even Tre'Davious White, like their top corner, I would say he's been a few steps back from his normal self. So this entire secondary has been exploitable. They're not pressuring the passer that much, and they're definitely not a good run defense at this point. So I wouldn't try too much to pick between the two and sprinkle both. I'm reasonably confident in both these guys as like top 5 plays on the board this week.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one that's super popular for DFS. So in these situations, I would rather err on the side of like overstacking just to try and get a little bit more unique. It's expensive to do it, but nice to have a piece like John Brown that's a little bit cheaper. I know that earlier this week, Sigmund Bloom was talking about Josh Allen as a potential buy low, someone we should go out there and trade for because his schedule does get a little bit lighter here, which is always positive. But this next situation is one that I haven't been able to really get right most of the year. I'm a little bit nervous, obviously, with the quarterback play for the Bears, but Anthony Miller's 4K, Darnell Mooney is 3,900. Anthony Miller, I mean, last week he reels in 8 of his 11 targets, 73 yards. They obviously lost that game in overtime, but that's his highest target count since week 1. Mooney, on the other side of it, he's looked like the number 2 in this offense behind Allen Robinson, in my opinion. I think the upside there is probably a little bit capped by quarterback play, but do you have any, takes on the Bears wide receiver group? They are cheap.
Yeah, I love Anthony Miller, the player. He's a guy that I've been in on a long time, but he is the sort of number 3 receiver here because Darnell Mooney over the last 2 weeks, he's run 42 routes. Anthony Miller's up there at 35, but they really only play him in the slot, which I think is interesting. I don't think this Bears coaching staff at this point, we could have made the excuse for Matt Nagy and the offensive group there. They're like, okay, coming into 2020, they finally have a sort of alternative to Mitch Trubisky. So maybe we'll find out if it's always just been like Matt Nagy's on tilt because he's got to call plays for Trubisky. But I think we've seen, even with Foles under center, this is a team that can't really adjust, that isn't making optimal decisions. I don't think Mooney's a bad player at all, but he's a vertical route runner. He is a speed guy. He's up there, 19.8 air yards per target over the last 2 weeks. This is a guy that's been a vertical player throughout those don't always hit either, by the way. We've seen that Mooney can absolutely get blanked because Foles, he might be a vertically inclined passer, but he's even said it publicly to the media, even though I don't think he thought Brian Greasy was going to air these demons, but he's the one who said that I don't have the time to sit behind this offensive line. And I think that's the key to this game run. Why I actually think it's pretty intriguing, because the Titans are a fun team to stack because we pretty much know where the ball's going. Like, they're going to put it in Derrick Henry's hands. We know that. But then they're also pretty much just going to target A.J. Brown and one other guy. Sometimes that's Corey Davis. He's been the guy of late. Other times it's Jonnu Smith. And then that's pretty much it. So they're a pretty fun team from a DFS perspective. And I'm thinking more and more, Joe, that they're a team we want to run it back against, because this Titans pass rush is a huge problem. They had two QB hits against Joe Burrow and a injury decimated offensive line last week. Like, that's unbelievable. They're dead last in sack rate. They just cut Vic Beasley on Tuesday. So, I mean, this could be a week maybe where Foles has the time in the pocket to hit Mooney on some of those deep patterns. But I also like that they're getting Anthony Miller involved, like you saw last week, because they don't have the time to set up too many deep shots. And this is a quick separation, primarily slot guy who can win after the catch, win on intermediate routes, and even on some vertical routes as well. So, like, I think both of these guys are in play. There's probably almost no scenario where they both hit. But, you know, of the two, I think if I'm looking for more safety, DraftKings PPR reception value, I'm definitely going to go with Anthony Miller. But I like the fact that there's this pass rush advantage for Chicago where they could potentially hit Mooney on some of those deeper patterns.
Yeah, I like it. I think that if you're looking just for a cash game play, I'm with you. That probably doesn't make sense to go to a guy like Mooney just because how he's used. But there could be some big play potential in this game, especially if, like you said, he has time to get down the field for a change. So that's nice. We got a couple more minutes. I want to, I guess, run one more thing by you. I think these Carolina wide receivers are going to be really popular this week against Kansas City. Obviously, we would assume there's going to be some nice game script there, but even the pricing. So Robbie Anderson, he's 6,300. His weighted opportunity is 0.7, leading the slate literally right at guys like Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, and he's only 6,300. So that was kind of an eye raiser for me. And then DJ Moore, not too far away. He's 5,600, so he's insanely cheap as well. 0.6 weighted opportunity. Both these guys are in the top 15 of yards per route run. So like I don't know what it is. I'm always like kind of tempted to play these Carolina guys regardless of the spot, but I think that both of them make a decent run back if you're going to go back to Mahomes this week. Any thoughts on those guys?
Oh, absolutely. And like, for the most part, you know, I love Curtis Samuel. The coaching staff really likes Curtis Samuel. Like, they always talk about the fact that he's been huge on third downs for them, whether it's as a rusher or as a receiver. They've really liked the way he's mixed into the offense. But for the most part, this team just targets these two top wide receivers in Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. And then they use, actually, that just kind of makes Samuel more efficient. No, he's not normally a, high catch rate type of guy, but he has been this year because of the way they're using him. And they don't get a tight, Ian Thomas, Chris Manhurst, these guys aren't involved in the offense at all. So it makes a ton of sense that these two guys, Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore, inherit and absorb all of those targets. I really like Robbie Anderson this week because you mentioned it, like, from just a raw metric standpoint, he looks like a top-end number one receiver. That's the way he's been used this year. He has been a little more quiet of late than as he started in September and even early October. I think this is a good spot in a high-scoring game. Like you mentioned, they're going to be trailing the Chiefs. I really like going back to Anderson in this spot and sort of buying back in on that high-end usage. And, like, this is a guy that deserves it too. I feel like I talked so much about Samuel in the offseason. We talk so much about DJ Moore all the time, but, like, Robbie Anderson has been good his entire career. I put up a video on my Instagram a couple weeks ago showing that, like, even back in 2018, 2019, he's a player that doesn't just separate deep. He separates at all levels of the field. So I really think it's not too surprising, that maybe the usage is surprising, but the fact that he's winning with this usage is not that surprising considering the player he's been throughout his career.
Love it, man. Matt Harmon, everyone. Show him some love on Instagram, by the way. Let's get Matt Harmon's Instagram numbers up a little bit. He deserves it, all right? Safe travels, brother. We'll see you next week. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you so much, Joe. Thanks again.